You're listening to My Inner Teacher with Peter Starius and Crystal Ariel. The answers you seek are within you.
Welcome, Chris. It's so nice to have you here on the podcast. We have an incredible opportunity to learn something that I think is powerful in your personality and also your profession, because you've had a very unusual life. So I'm just we kind of just go with the flow here. Tell us, the listeners, a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm honored. I'm grateful to be here, grateful to have a conversation with you, and it's just wonderful to see your face as well. I'm a San Luis Obispo native, um, 39 years old, almost to the big 40, and I have a wife and two young boys that I live with here in San Luis Obispo, basically Pismo Beach. So over the last 2 years, actually, life has looked a little different. We've been in Iceland, living abroad, and having to given the opportunity to give my kids that perspective of the world. But my career and my job has been a travel photographer and photojournalist over the last almost 20 years now, writing books and making films and shooting brand campaigns for companies everywhere, all over the world. But I think it's the kind of the expeditions to remote and unique places on this earth that have really given me the greatest joy and perspective, and given my career kind of the life that I've always dreamt of. So yeah, that's a snapshot, I guess, in some capacity.
Fantastic. Well, the social media presence that you have, when I first kind of stumbled into your Instagram page, and just the number of people that interact with you because of the incredible images that you produce, and these environments you go into that, frankly, I would imagine, and I want you to tell this story, like when you first started doing this and you're going into these remote places, and there's no script to follow per se. It's like you maybe did some scouting. How do you decide where to be, when to be there, what you're looking for? I mean,
Yeah.
it's the great unknown. Tell me, how does
Yeah,
that work?
I would I would say that in the beginning it looked like utterly terrifying. There's no real right way to put it. You know, as a kid, when you're 21, 22, starting to travel for work, and those first trips are taking you to, Yemen and Dubai and Oman, or it takes you. It's a stark contrast that the world is such a different place than you thought it was, growing up in such a small town like San Luis Obispo, um, with sometimes, slightly maybe small town ideals and things like that. You very quickly have the world opened up to you. And I think that in the beginning, it looked a lot like putting the camera between me and this subject or this place or this experience that was wildly uncomfortable, and using the camera almost as a way to filter these kind of unique experiences. And over time, honestly, what's interesting is it's looked a lot like putting the camera down to allow those experiences to permeate, allow yourself to be more uncomfortable, and realize that in the process of doing so, better images have come to life, better moments, more meaningful moments, not just shooting and everything and as we call it, spraying and praying. You're actually very intentional, you're very thoughtful, you're very connected, and those images, like, they mean more to you at the end of the day. They mean a lot. And I would say that from a purely, logistical standpoint, to answer your question, research plays a big role into it. Understanding where you're going, learning and realizing the customs might look like, what the food might be like. How do you ask to go to the bathroom? How do you say thank you? There's these like simple things that I think really help make those travel experiences a little less uncomfortable and a little more enjoyable. But I think that the thing I come back to always, that I really appreciate, and it's very much at the center of my mind, because I just spent the last 50 days traveling through remote Asia, like very remote Asia, and being in some third world countries, and then being in some first world countries, and just seeing the differences. And it was a great reminder for me. But I really loved and appreciated the idea that as human beings, we still have the privilege of communicating, with our hands, and trying to get your message across when you don't know the language. And if you want to immediately thrust yourself back into that extremely humbled state, try to ask for something without knowing the language or having nobody who can speak it for you. And as great as technology might be, the Google Translate is not going to get you what you need. And so I think that there's this just vulnerability that we put ourselves into when traveling that has been, for me, my greatest teacher and the thing that I come back to. Despite having a camera, that almost feels like an accessory to the experience at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk to me a little bit, talk to the listeners a little bit about danger. Like
Danger.
danger. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
because, I've seen images of you in Eastern Russia in swells in ice cold water all by yourself, what looked like all by yourself and one or two surfers, and just staying afloat and not
Yeah.
drowning. And you're trying to take pictures. Like that's just one example. There's other examples, I'm sure. Tell me about that. Danger.
Yeah. That's a great question. And I'll say that I think that danger, obviously, the kind of the flip side of the coin of danger is risk, right? And usually it's this acceptance or acknowledgement that risk is a part of the job. But I think what's interesting is that I see risk as being a part of every job, every career. If it's void of risk, I feel very uncomfortable. And I'm not saying in any capacity that danger is something I seek out. I think that danger is usually, for most of us, and it's experience that we sort of find ourselves in. We find ourselves in, and we kind of end up in that place. And then it's how we manage it that usually kind of, I don't know, makes it either something really scary or something really a great life lesson or a great story. My relationship with danger has obviously evolved over the years, and there have been some situations that felt very dangerous. Oftentimes, it was never those experiences out in nature, out in the ocean. It was more about being, subjected to being, thrown into a Russian jail cell because of a visa issue, or being interrogated at customs because of bringing walkie-talkies into a country, or eating really, really bad food and realizing that, you are going to just have to let this pass through you and there's nothing you can do and there's no pharmacy you can get to or anything like that. And it's interesting to me how that relationship over the years changes, because I think that our tolerance for risk, it just adjusts. It moves, and the needle moves, and we move with it, right? And I think that when I look at it, I don't think of myself as a very like a risk-taking person. I feel like I'm actually very risk-averse, and so much of my job is about managing and negotiating those risks, understanding and doing the time to train, so that when you are in that situation, you feel prepared. Your body is prepared, your mind is prepared. You're spending a year, 2 years planning on going on this trip, so you have a lot of time to actually synthesize all the experiences that you might throw yourself into. And what's interesting is it's almost as if the trips that ask, or the experiences that ask the most, you feel the most prepared for. Like the ones that should be the most dangerous, crossing, Iceland's Vatnajökull Glacier on a fat bike, and riding in the middle of the night or whatever over crevasses, et cetera, like no risk, super mellow, no big deal. You could have almost done it with your eyes closed. And then you go somewhere that is very casual, and you find yourself in a very dangerous situation because you let your guard down. And I know that that's kind of a unique way of looking at it, but this sounds silly, but like I almost get more anxious going on that trip where everything should be just so chill and no big deal, but you just know that something is going to pop out. And so, yeah, most dangerous situations have never been like animal encounters or things like that in nature. It's usually been human interactions, usually whether it's borders or political or something of that nature. Those are the kind of threats that I feel the most concerned about. Parking my car somewhere in Seattle is more scary to me than like being in remote Iceland in a snowstorm.
I feel like going through customs is terrifying for everybody. Even if you're not doing
Yeah.
anything wrong, you're like, oh my God, maybe I am doing something wrong and I don't even know.
Oh, totally.
And they're
I
going to
agree
catch
with
me.
Yeah, and I'm like, is my face does my face look like I'm hiding something? I'm like, what's wrong with me? I feel like I get anxious even thinking about it, you know?
Do you spend in these journeys? There's this idea of being alone by yourself, like seeking this uh, intimate connection with nature that can only seem to show up when you're alone by yourself. Uh, do you have a lot of those moments these days, or are you always kind of surrounded by crew or by officials, or what is that environment like?
That's another just excellent question, and something that I've had a lot of time to think about over the last couple months here. But I would say that absolutely most the time, if I if I am having a moment, an experience solo in some capacity, it's because I've planned for it to be that way. And so, yes, you're correct. A lot of times I am surrounded by, whether it's a crew of people, an assistant, a, digital technician, a producer, client, et cetera, you're going on a shoot and there's a handful of people kind of, operating as not necessarily safety, but just operating as, people that either need your attention or your focus. And so what happens is you're giving a lot to them. You're, pouring out your cup to everybody else. And I find that for me personally, what's required in this job to maintain any level of creativity or any level of, I guess, even homeostasis in terms of like who I am as a person is I need time alone. I need time in nature by myself. And I've really struggled with that because at times it feels selfish. When when you have kids, you have a family, you have, you know, businesses in multiple countries and you're trying to make it all work, like taking time for yourself to go out and like have alone time is, I think for the modern American male can feel very selfish. And I'm hopeful that it's not seeming that way as much now, but I definitely have dealt with my own bouts of burnout and had to kind of, reimagine what that looks like. And so over the years, I've really tried to pour myself into, experiences that have maybe asked a bit more of me, on a personal level and forced me to be in situations where, I'm in the place that I love the most, which is that place of being alone in nature, kind of having a sense of self-reliance, not because I'm a masochist or because I want to go out there and necessarily find myself, but because I think that it serves as a beautiful reminder of what I care about most. And I just got back from Kyrgyzstan. I was there for 30 days, and I did a bike race through the Silk Road mountains in Kyrgyzstan, and it was all solo. So you're racing 8 days by yourself, sleeping in the dirt every night, at 13,000 feet, 12,000 feet, riding over mountain passes. And yeah, it's a great time to reflect. Sometimes it's looked like that, and sometimes it's looked like doing a darkness retreat, which I did last year in Oregon for 3 days, and just total darkness in a cave. And that was an incredible experience as well, on the total opposite end of the spectrum. But I think both can bring you back to a sense of self.
Was that with Sky Cave retreats?
It was, yeah, it was with Sky Cave. Yeah, great people over there. Really, really sweet.
So your history with organized religion, and I want to touch on this, Chris, because there's a lot of things in our modern world where we're afraid to talk about it, but I'd like to
Yeah.
talk about it.
Yeah, we
Um,
talk about it as much as you want.
just our platform is about listening to an inner authority, and
Mhm.
for some people that's divinity. It's a connection to the divine. In those moments that are unplanned, unscripted, where you find yourself by accident or by luck, it
Mhm.
depends on how you look at it, in situations where your own intuition, can you describe that for yourself? Like, what do you do in those moments? You're alone, it's not planned, you're having to deal with something that's important, whether it's life threatening or not.
Mm.
Where do you seek that
Like
guidance?
like what do I call upon, and what do I kind of lean into for that guidance? Is that kind of what you're yeah. I would say yeah. Go ahead.
No, well, I was just going to say
Yeah.
this idea where you feel lost, and in those moments of feeling lost, you find something new about yourself, And so I'm curious in terms of your life experience, and
Yeah.
you
I
have those.
definitely, yeah, for sure. I mean, this is a deep one, and it's kind of a hard one to sum up in a bite-size,
Let's try.
response. But because I mean, religion has played a role in the, most of my entire adult and childhood life, and it's only over the last couple of years that I've really taken a step away from it, and in many ways just tried to reimagine what life is like without it. And I actually think that in so many ways, um, for me personally, and not speaking for anybody else, but I think religion has checked boxes. And it's almost allowed me to relegate this spiritual experience to being in a place or at a certain time in a place. And on 9 a.m. on a Sunday morning, this is when you're allowed to be emotional, and this is when you're allowed to cry, and this is when you're allowed to feel these things, etc., etc., etc. And I think that I'm just trying to honestly get as far away from that as I can, to be honest. I mean, I still feel a closeness to divinity and to, the divinity, and I still feel a closeness to my belief pattern, but it's so much bigger, so much different. And I guess the only thing I can really say is that, um, growing up and realizing that so many of life's greatest questions and or feelings or thoughts or moments of unclarity were kind of, I guess, um, dismissed in some capacity by the fact that, like, oh, you'll get answers later, or oh, you'll figure this out, or you know what, you're doing what you need to do to be a good dad, and you're taking the time with your family to do this, and it doesn't really matter how the relationships feel in the moment. Like, you're doing your part. And in fact, stepping away from that and just prioritizing time for, first and foremost, like, me, because I think in order to be a good parent to anybody, you really have to show your kids that, like, you prioritize yourself, in some capacity. And then prioritizing my family, it's drawn us closer than I could have ever imagined. And so, to kind of get back to your question, sorry, I would say that nowadays, I feel much closer to, those beliefs that I have, and they don't look defined by a certain, religious group or organization or anything like that these days. And I've always felt like the most beautiful cathedrals we have are the ones in nature. And I actually think it's kind of, it's, this is not meant to be disrespectful to anybody, but I think it's a little tiny bit comical that humans, with all of our incredible intuition and ingenuity and everything, we like take these beautiful pieces of stone and natural materials and we build up this little house of worship, when really it's like, oh, that's just like bits and pieces of what I already gave you to appreciate. Thank you so much for like reconstructing it into something that, and I know you're an architect, so I'm not trying to dismiss, but I do think from like a religious perspective, I'm like, can't we feel that with those close to us and just being outside in nature? And I think that what's happened is nature has become this place of like a little bit of fear for some people. And I understand that. I appreciate that. That's needed too. But I think that that's kind of where I really feel the closest, and where I feel the closest with those I love. And I get that religion is a place that we like sometimes need to step into to support other people. I'm all for that. I'm all for going to church to be a support for others. But for myself personally, um, I think that if I was going to believe in a book, it would probably be The Alchemist, and it wouldn't be the Bible,
Right. Yeah.
because I feel like the universe is probably more willing to support the things that we really care about and put our time and attention into, maybe more so than like, a deity.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a heavy question. I'm sorry. I wish I like
Not
want
at
to bottle it up, but it's
So
such a good one, and I don't know if it makes any sense what I'm saying, but maybe.
it does. And
Yeah.
this platform this is unscripted, Chris. This is like we're seeing real people in real life situations. You just have a very unusual life situation. You have a situation in life that, people dream. I dream about that. I'm not as eh, lucky. I was going to say lucky, and then I filtered it, and then I'm coming back to it. Do you consider yourself lucky?
Absolutely. I mean, there are absolutely days where I am like, just please give me a desk job. I would give anything to not have this level of responsibility. But very, very quickly, I come back to the ground and I realize that like I am not meant to be. I don't think I was ever meant to be managed, and I don't think that I perform well in that way. And I really appreciate so much what life has offered me. And I also feel like there were a lot of really intense sacrifices along the way that I'm still trying to come to terms with now. Um, and still trying to come to, trying to come full circle in my life, because I think that health and friendship and a lot of those types of things were kind of not prioritized when you're prioritizing, working for yourself and starting a career at 20. It comes with a level of sacrifice I think that just most people maybe don't fully recognize. And I don't know that I would wish that upon anybody, because it is hard coming full circle. And I think what's interesting is the first time I met you was probably the first time in my life where I think that I was in this chapter of trying to rediscover what it means to be healthy, as silly as that sounds, even though you would think that somebody traveling the world and shooting in the water and shooting surf photographs, during is what I was doing during that time would have been, I don't know, maybe the pinnacle of health or aware of those things, but actually it couldn't be the opposite. You're just kind of a self-professed workaholic, and that's a really dangerous place to be when you're that young.
I know it
Can
well.
you talk a little
Yeah.
bit more about those sacrifices, and maybe like if they're if it's like unavoidable? Like, do you
Mm.
think you had to make those sacrifices to get where you are now, and now that you are where you are now, you can focus on health and family and all that other stuff?
That's an excellent question. And I think that it is avoidable, but the best way that I've ever had it described was like if you imagine a stove with 4 burners on the stove, right? And one of those burners represents health, and one of them is family, and one of them is relationships, and one of them is work. And in order to be successful, you're going to have to turn down one of those burners, which I believe to be absolutely true. Like, I don't think that you can manage all 4 equally. At least I haven't found out how to do it. So keep in mind, everything I'm saying is like the world according to Chris. And I know that there are people out there who have way better advice, and I urge people to listen to them. But for a more realistic take, I have not figured out how to not turn down one of those burners to be successful. In order to be really successful, I think you have to turn down 2 of them. And I don't mean turn them off, but I mean turn them down to the point where like they aren't maybe as much of a priority. And if I look at like how much time I spend now prioritizing health, and just purely the time that it takes to like give yourself an hour, 2 hours a day of being outside physical movement, that is an investment of time. That is time out of your 8-hour workday. So either your workday extends to 10 hours, but then you have kids, and then what? Like then where's time for them? So all I'm saying is that you either become very, very intelligent with how to manage your time, or you turn down some of these human priorities, which relationships is one of them. I remember very specifically, to your point, kind of realizing in my early 20s, like everybody that I went to high school with, like I wasn't close with at all. And all of my friends that I was making were through work. It was part of work. And so those relationships, when built through work, they don't have that core tendency to fill you up. You always question like, well, is this just a working relationship, or am I actually close to these people? And so that also emotionally kind of leaves you a little bit dry at times. And so I think that for me, it looked like that. Now, looking back at 20-year-old me, this is the funniest thing, because being 40, looking back at 20-year-old me, what advice would I give myself? Well, I think that there's 2 things. First of all, I think that because this is challenging, maybe even challenging to like articulate clearly, but one of the things that was tough for me was because of my very strict religious views as a kid, which I do think for sure helped me stay out of a lot of chaos and helped me stay out of a lot of stuff. It also didn't allow me to connect with people in many ways, because when we'd be on a surf trip somewhere and friends of mine would go out for drinks, I would be like, I don't want anything to do with that. I don't want to be there at all, which is fine. But like, when you're constantly finding excuses to not spend time with those people or bond with those people, it makes you feel very alone and makes you feel kind of depressed and pretty lonely at times. And that's like your job. You know, you're going to these places in the middle of nowhere with people that you're trying to bond with, trying to form a relationship with, a work relationship, albeit, but still you're asking something of each other and there's trust involved. And so all I'm saying is that those friendships they never really, a lot of them never really like blossomed into anything. And that's really painful. And I think that when I would come home from trips, I just didn't have the bandwidth to pour time into like, oh, I'm going to make time for this friend, or I'm going to go surfing with this buddy, or whatever it was. It was really tough. So that's that part of it. And then the health component of it was just something that felt really easy to turn off because it just didn't seem like a priority at the time. You know, you're like, well, I'm going to be on this trip and out in the sun and swimming every day. And you come home and you're just sitting in front of the computer working endlessly. And, you know, your back is suffering and parts of you are suffering. And I think that typically as maybe Peter would say, you know, we don't really address those things until they're screaming loud enough to where we have to listen. And so that was a part of it. And looking back, giving that advice, I think the thing I would urge is to say like, hey, I know that you're so busy looking like to the future, to what's ahead, and that's great, but like don't forget to enjoy the present moment because even now there are aspects of my career back then that I would give anything to like, I would give anything to have that time again because it was so precious. And it was, even though it felt like it was full of responsibility and super overwhelming, it actually wasn't in comparison to now. And even though my health felt like it was, shitty and just, sorry, I don't know if I can swear, if it was crappy and I just felt like I wasn't fully like, showing up for myself, I actually think that was incredible. And I wish that I had that now. And so grass is always greener. And I just feel like I would have absolutely unequivocally given up 10, 20, 30% of the success that I found to maintain some of those moments, relationships, and prioritize myself a little more. So that's my perspective. But
Yeah.
I'm also not much of like a look back and reminisce on the past kind of person. So I don't know that I like put a lot of weight into that. I'm kind of just trying really hard to think about what I'm doing in this moment, right this second, right now.
Well, that's just it. That reflecting back is context for the present. And
Yeah.
the present is, okay, I've done it that way. And I wouldn't call them regrets, but there were opportunities missed. And
Right.
now, here I'm pushing 70, looking back and telling the 40-year-old me, relax a little bit, man. Like I see a lot of my 40s, like your 40s,
Yeah.
look like you're about to just launch into something really big in your life, even bigger than you have.
Yeah.
And
But Peter,
so,
you at like 60, I would give anything to be at that level of health.
right.
Your journey has been amazing. And I think that's kind of actually a huge and inspirational thing for me. I mean, I would say that going and seeing you as a teacher, it was one of the first experiences I had where I went to a teacher that was a decent amount older than me. And I was so inspired by just the malleability of what you practiced and how it just made me like question kind of everything, to be honest.
When we talk about luck, Chris, you have this sense of incredible luck to be in the environment that you make a living at. I feel exactly the same thing. It's just my making a living as a yoga teacher isn't quite as lucrative as your life as a photographer. But luckily, I've had other things in my life to provide that part of it. But yeah, luck is an amazing thing, and I don't really know the mystery of it all, and I don't look back either. I think as I get older, I'm not looking forward that much either as well. I'm not as connected to planning everything. I'm trusting. This the inner teacher is about radical self-trust. And as you get older, that muscle gets stronger. And
Yeah, for
what
sure.
the appearances of, you have intentions of the future looking a certain way, but in reality, the moment is now, and the
Yeah.
moment can be whatever you choose in that moment. And
The moment really is now, right? It
yeah,
really is. That's for
so
sure.
much so. Well, we're getting really close to the end here, Chris. And I just want to thank you for. I know we tried several times to get you on the show.
Yeah,
Thank you for making the time today.
absolutely. I mean, honestly, yeah, it's an honor. And I really, I love those hard hitting questions. Those are the ones that mean something to me. Those are the ones that I want to talk about. And honestly, I feel like is the best pearls of wisdom you can offer to any younger generation, who's struggling to figure things out, because there just isn't, I don't know that there's as many resources as we really think for people who kind of are navigating complex careers and navigating, you know, um, jobs or things that ask a lot of us. And I know that with what you've done, it's asked a lot of you and asked a lot from your partner. And I know that with what I've done, it continues to do so every day. And so yeah, I appreciate that. And I think that that's what I hope to put more of into the world, to be honest, more resources for people to feel like they're not alone in that experience.
Yeah, exactly. The Inner Teacher Academy is about just that, that there are resources to support not following the masses. There are resources now to support your unique path in life. And I consider Inner Teacher Academy to be the beginning of something bigger, and including maybe having you come in and teach some of the things that
I'd
you
love that.
excel at on our
Yeah.
platform in the near distant future. So
I'd be
I,
I'd
I
be honored. I'd be honored. I mean, anything that can speak to intuition and people learning to cultivate that voice is super, super important. Something that I would really love to cultivate more of in my life. Because a lot of it is just tuning out all the other noise, which is so important.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Well, I again thank you, Chris. I look forward to running into you in San Luis Obispo. By the way, just in case you don't know, Saturday mornings, 8:30 to 10, I teach at the Body and Balance Center in San Luis Obispo.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yeah,
Well, I'll be back. I'm moving back, and
yeah, great,
yeah, I'm excited to be on the Central Coast during the very best time of the year, fall. So yeah, it's
great.
it's absolutely
Thank
something
you.
will happen.
Thank you so much.
Nice. Nice to meet you, Chris.
That's it for this episode. Be well and stay open to the teacher within. If you've enjoyed our time together, follow or subscribe and stay tuned for upcoming chats you don't want to miss.